Hi, welcome to the Silver Spleen. My name is Joey Buttafuoco, and this is my review of Ip Man 1 and 2. Double Donnie! There's gonna be a lot of bifurcation in this review, but don't worry, I'm a doctor. Both of these films are directed by Wilson Yip. Both movies star Donnie Yen. Sammo Hung did the action choreography for both films. Both movies feature outstanding martial arts, thanks to Donnie Yen, Sammo Hung, and others. I personally feel as though the machine gun fist gets a little overused in the movies, but the rest of it is pretty much beyond reproach. Donnie Yen is a great martial artist. So is Sammo Hung, and Wong, and a lot of the other people. They're all great in this pair of movies. Ip Man tells the story of a young boy in rural China at the beginning of the 20th century who dreams of one day becoming a marine biologist and swimming with whales. I'm just messing with you. It's obvious these movies tell the story of Ip Man. Well, they tell a story. In part 1, he's rich. He has a pretty wife, and he's a martial arts master. But he's also humble, self-effacing, and generous. Ip Man and his family live in Foshan, a city in Guangdong province in southern China. The city is famous for martial arts, and the many martial arts schools all compete with one another. Ip Man tries to stay out of this, not taking on any students. But many people still seek him out to test their skill. They all fail because Ip Man is played by Donnie Yen. His wife, played by Lin Hung, hates it when he has to fight because it cuts into Ip Man's family time and tends to make a mess of the house. A local cop named Lee, played by Gordon Lam Gatong, tries to keep the martial arts mayhem to a minimum, reminding Ip Man and the others that the town is not their boxing ring. One day, a northern martial artist, played with extravagant excess by Wong, comes to town and proceeds to kick more ass than a karate tournament for epileptic donkeys. Soon enough, he makes his way to the Ip residence. The instructions that Ip Man gets from Lee the cop, and from his wife, were probably two of my favorite moments in this movie. Believe it or not, all that is just the first half hour of the film. And it's a great half hour. There's subtlety, nuance, great martial arts, and well done drama. It's funny, exciting, engaging, and very entertaining. In Ip Man 2, Ip Man is poor, but he still has a wife. She's pregnant, so they still get along. He's still humble, self-effacing, and generous to a fault. He's broke, but refuses to make his students pay their full tuition. His wife doesn't like this. Obviously, she got pregnant before he opened the school, but never mind that. After figuratively schooling Huang Xiaoming, Ip Man begins to do so in a literal sense. The new student brings his friends to the school, and slowly Ip Man gains a larger student body. That's not a euphemism. But as soon as his school begins to gain momentum, he comes up against the local boss of the martial clubs, played by Sammo Hung. Turns out Ip Man needs to kick into the hood. In fact, if he even wants to teach at all, he has to accept challenges from any and all of the other Sifu. I won't spoil the outcome, but Ip Man is played by Donnie Yen. The duel is obviously a great martial arts spectacle, especially the fight between Donnie Yen and Sammo Hung. Sammo's choreography is excellent, and even at his advanced age and weight, he's still very capable of keeping up with Donnie Yen. Like part 1, all of this takes place in the first half hour of the film. And like part 1, it's funny, entertaining, nuanced, and balanced. So what about the other hour in both of these films? In part 1, the Japanese invade China at the beginning of the second act. In part 2, Westerners oppress and insult Chinese people at the beginning of the second act. Both of those things are historical facts that I do not contest. Not the second act, I mean the actual things that happen. But if historical fact is so important, why at the end of part 1 does the movie make it seem that Ip Man fled Foshan because of the Japanese? He fled to Hong Kong after the war because he was in the Kuomintang. He was fleeing the communists. In part 1, Ip Man is shown refusing to teach the Japanese Wing Chun. That is also an historical fact. But he didn't fight 10 Japanese soldiers or a Japanese general. He also didn't work in a coal refinery. He was a policeman, like Gordon Lam's character Lee. Except that Lee is played as a bad person for collaborating with the Japanese, which I assume policemen in an occupied city would have had to do. The Japanese are portrayed with an incredible lack of subtlety, to the point of using visual cues that are literally as old as the war itself. The same goes for part 2. Subtlety is apparently reserved for Chinese people. This is a poster I saw at Film Art advertising the film before its release. Ooh, subtle. The portrayals of the Western bad guys in Ip Man 2 are so overstated, it's nearly comic. I wonder if they went out of their way to find people who look genetically disadvantaged. They certainly weren't looking for people who could act.
Wallace, you've seen what the local newspapers are saying about us.
What's especially silly is that most of the non-Chinese people in the world who are interested in martial arts films are Westerners, who, I assure you, don't talk like this.
Will somebody get this yellow piece of fat out of here?
Maybe because I'm a Westerner, I should do the review like this! Luckily for you, I'm not going to. But these movies aren't made for Westerners or Japanese people. They're made for China. Yeah, I know, Bruce Lee had the same message. But that was 1972, over 40 years ago. The same year, in fact, as in historical fact, that Mao Zedong not only forgave, but thanked Japan. There's a link in the description in case you don't believe me. I just find it sad that China still needs to stoke xenophobia with these clumsy, ham-fisted portrayals. The message that these films are trying to project could be made implicitly just by showing what happens. People aren't stupid. A boxing match between a Westerner and a Chinese person inherently carries meaning. There's no need to slavishly state the obvious, is there? These things don't offend me because I'm a Westerner, or because I'm Japanese, because I'm not. They offend me because they're used for political purposes, like distracting the Chinese audience from things they might otherwise think about. But mostly they offend me because they're pedantic and boorish and unentertaining. Bruce Lee let the message speak for itself. 40 years later, Wilson Yip can't manage that kind of finesse, and neither can Donnie Yen. If you enjoy martial arts, you'll enjoy these movies. If you want to watch these movies, buy them. There's a link in the description where you could do just that. If you enjoyed this review, please leave me a comment. If you didn't enjoy the review, leave me a comment. If you enjoy the channel, please subscribe so you can find out about all the new videos right away. Thank you for watching. Look, he shows no signs of penitence. Ah, he is evil.